Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After running through the news you need to know about, we run you through the Fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. So, we are going to continue the list making on the show, which I've had a really fun time doing. Going back and looking at some of this stuff, we're going to be doing the 5 worst quarterbacks since Dan Marino retired. There was a lot to go through. Hopefully, I at least got this list, at least a little bit right. It's a very insignificant list, but at the same time, it took a lot of research to kind of get these names together and decide. But it was a fun list to make in a weird way. But let's get into the news you need to know about. Not a ton of news to talk about. Obviously, it's kind of the dead period. That's why we're doing some of these lists. I'm having a great time doing the list, though. I'm not going to lie. But anyway, back to the news you need to know about. This first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors and has to do with Chris Grier and his management of the cap. The Dolphins currently rank 26th in the NFL in dead cap money, which is really good. Again, this information comes from Pro Football Rumors. Just $8 million in dead cap money. One thing Chris Grier has been very good at since he's taken over is managing the cap, and especially when you compare his resume to former GMs under Stephen Ross. It's not even close. His decision-making in free agency is also pretty solid, and obviously his ability to get deals done with other teams around the league has been very good as well. So Chris Grier, honestly, has done a really good job at general managing. When it comes to drafting, and you look at his resume, at least in recent years, it's improved a lot. He's hit big time on some of these drafts. Ultimately, it'll come down to if Tua works out or not. If Tua does work out, Chris could go down as one of the greatest GMs in Dolphins history. If not he would have to win championships, but he would definitely be up there, for sure. Obviously, for him to be the best, he'd have to win a few championships, probably more than 2. But again, like I said, it'll ultimately come down to if Tua works out or not. But again, props to Chris Grier for he's done especially like I said, comparing him to some of the other GMs before him. He's done a pretty good job at managing the cap. And speaking of the cap, this next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. The 2022 NFL cap space by team. The Dolphins are currently 8th in the NFL with the most cap space with $16 million. That's currently right now. That's not in the future. That's right now. Still pretty nice. If they needed to go out there and get maybe a surprise veteran cut, they would obviously have the money to do so. Again, good job by Chris. He's done a good job. And you think about, there's a lot of really nice big name veteran talent on this team right now, and a lot of really, really good young talent on this roster. And like I will say again, and I'll repeat it again, but it is true, this all comes down to Tua. If Tua works out, Chris has really built a really, really good team. One of the more balanced teams that the Dolphins have had in a very long time. I would have to look at some of the other rosters, but if Tua works out, this is one of the best rosters the Dolphins have had, and at least definitely in the last decade. But again, it ultimately would come down to Tua. But when you look at some of the Chris Grier stuff, it's actually more positive than it is negative, especially recently. And not only that, but coming off the negative stuff, all the negative stuff after that, this previous season ended, the 2021 NFL season ended, to completely turn it on its head and do what he's done with the roster is pretty magnificent. So, I've definitely hated on Chris Grier for some of the other things that he's done wrong. But lately, it's been pretty nice. Okay, so let's get into this next. This is just, whoa. I'm sorry, everybody. That was not English. That was from a different language. But this next news story is interesting. And I think it'll be interesting to see everybody else's opinion about this particular player. But this next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins tight end Mike Gesicki unlikely to agree to extension this season. The Dolphins And franchise tag tight end Mike Gesicki, again, this comes from Pro Football Rumors, have not really, quote, have not really engaged in contract talks, according to Mike Garafolo, of NFL Network. So let me repeat that. They have not really engaged, according to Mike Garafolo of NFL Network, in contract talks. Obviously, he was tagged this offseason. It is pretty, according to multiple news outlets, it's pretty much set in stone that he will play on the tag this year. He signed, obviously, the franchise tag. He'll earn up to $10 million this year. And Mike had this to say about the possible extension. He said, quote, "I'm absolutely open to negotiation, but it's not really up to me. If they reach out, my agent will be listening." It's the most gobbledygook, very political NFL answer of all time. But there you go. But I think the most interesting part of this is, like, what is the future of Mike Gesicki as in a Dolphins uniform, and was it smart for Chris Grier not to give him that extension? Because, like I just read, they have the money to do it. It's not like they're strapped for money. So, in my opinion, if I was Chris Grier, it's actually harder if you're in his shoes what to do with Mike Gesicki. Because if you look at Gesicki's career as a Dolphin, it is inconsistent. As much as Dolphins fans don't want to hear this, he does make a lot of splash plays. He has had inconsistent quarterback play, which is obviously goes... and he's had some bad offensive lines, a lot of really bad offenses, a lot of bad play calling. Yet he's still been able to produce, so that's kind of like on the positive side of Gesicki. But when you watch Mike play, he can sometimes contribute to the offensive problems, and I know people don't want to hear that. And I'm not even talking about his blocking. I'm talking about his ability to, one, run after the catch is almost non-existent. It actually is zero. It's non-existent. He is not a good run after the catch player. Obviously, in this offense, I don't think he'll be asked to do that, but it would be nice to have someone like that, because we saw what George Kittle could do in a similar, obviously the same system, being able to draw plays up for Kittle to kind of be in that short pass game and really produce. And Gesicki's not going to be able to do any of that. So his run after the catch stuff isn't great. And then when you look at his ability to separate in man-to-man coverage against some of these athletic safeties, he's a long strider. He's slow sometimes coming in and out of his breaks, and that kind of leads to some inconsistencies in his games when it comes to separation. One thing I will say, and again, this is what makes the decision so difficult, is because you're really trying to predict the future of Mike Gesicki. Will he take that leap with everybody else on the offense? And I guess at the end of the day, when I really think about it, what I would do if I was in Chris Grier's shoes, I think I would have tagged him too. It's obviously a risk. If he has a big year, you're probably going to be paying him a lot more than you would have. But the tight end market isn't that crazy. So I don't know. I don't know what you guys saying down in the comments, what you would do. But like I said, when you really break down Mike Gesicki, there's a lot to like and there's a lot not to like. There's a lot that you could say, well, if he had this and this, maybe his numbers would be better. But that doesn't change the fact that when you watch him play the game, he definitely has deficiencies in his game. Like I said, he's not a run blocker. He's at all. He isn't good after the catch, and he struggles in man-to-man coverage at times. So, one thing I will say, though, about Mike, in the red zone, he has been, especially last year, he was missed a lot in the red zone. Like, a lot. He was open quite a few times. The offense did not do a good job, and the quarterbacks did not do a good enough job of taking advantage of one-on-one coverage, which is surprising, in the red zone. There was quite a few throws missed in Gesicki's direction, especially against the Jets at home in Miami. He was open a few times in the end zone, and Tua just couldn't see him. So, again, it's a mess, everybody. It's a mess. I think what it comes down to, and the reason why they franchise tagged him, is because of all the reasons I just said and some of the inconsistencies. But also, they probably want to see what he can do in this offense, obviously, because I think it's going to be interesting to see how he fits into such a physical run-first offense. You think about all the great tight ends that have succeeded in this system, like Shannon Sharp, and obviously George Kittle to kind of to name some big names. I'm trying to think of some other Washington players that were in the Shanahan offense that I can't really name off the top of my head right now, but there were a few. But the two big ones are obviously Shannon Sharp and Kittle. And those guys are obviously they're Hall of Famers. I'm not comparing Gesicki to them, but he has their games are completely different. Like Gesicki is more like Jimmy Graham. His game is very much like Jimmy Graham's. And when you look at what Shannon and Kittle did so well, it was very physical after the catch, could separate man-to-man coverage. They were much better route runners, and they were a lot more physical. So it'll be interesting to see how Mike McDaniel can acclimate a player like Mike Gesicki into an offense like that. Now, one thing I will say is Jimmy Graham was in a physical... People forget this about the Saints, but they actually were a physical team. They were obviously a pass-heavy team, but they definitely ran the ball a good amount. They were a somewhat balanced team. And Jimmy, they obviously found a niche for him, a niche for him in that offense. So maybe they'll use him like that, which is how Mike has kind of been used his entire career. We'll see if they do anything creative with it. Who knows? But I think at the end of the day, it's definitely a hard decision to make. I hope Mike has a breakout year because I do like him as a player. Obviously, he's made quite a few nice plays, but it is an interesting decision. I think Chris ultimately made the right one, just to kind of wait and see. This last news story is very insignificant, and really probably shouldn't even be on here, but I saw this on Pro Football Rumors, and I thought it was interesting. They're doing a release candidate for every team, and for the Dolphins it was Salvon Ahmed. And I think this is obviously, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but the running back group is obviously very crowded. Excuse me. So I don't know. Honestly, I could see Ahmed beating out Gaskin for that job. I really could. I don't know. It's tough. Gaskin is such... The thing is like Gaskin, when he has going for him, is he could really fill a role as a pass-catching running back, but at the same time, Chase Edmonds, honestly, is the best receiving back on the team. This is such a tough decision. Maybe Salvon Ahmed is the odd man out. I mean, how many running backs are we going to keep is another great question to ask. With Mostert, Edmonds, and Michelle, I think are the most talented on the roster. And then there's going to be a battle there. Because I think 4 is reasonable. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't want to count Ahmed out, though. And then obviously you have Doak as well still there. But I don't know. There's some things I like about Salvon. I think he's got a lot of nice receiving potential, and I don't think he's as good as Gaskin is right now. But I think he's a better runner than Gaskin. So it'll be interesting to see how that running back group pans out. I think that, like I said, the 3 that are the most talented would be Michelle, Mostert, and Edmonds. Now, the thing about Michelle and Mostert, both have injury histories, like bad ones. So you have to kind of keep that into account as well. So we'll see what happens. But it is a very talented group. I think now we're going to talk about the list. I don't know if you guys can hear. There's a little sound in the back, but hopefully it's not going to be too distracting. Now, this list, like I said, was extremely hard to make, and there's a lot of honorable mention. And again, just for everybody and again, the news is, I'm sure a lot of people are probably going to click out because the news is over. But this list was fun to make. This is the 5 worst. Last week, if you guys want to check it out, is the 5 best starting quarterbacks since Dan Marino retired. If you guys want to go check out that video. This is the 5 worst quarterbacks since Dan Marino started. And this is interesting. Is a much more interesting list. Because there's a lot of them. Obviously, every one of these are failures. Literally, all of these guys are failures. For pretty much everybody on this list is a failure, other than Tua. who we don't know yet. But so it's hard to kind of see who failed the worst. So in case you're wondering, these are all the quarterbacks that have started a game since Dan Marino. Now, here, before we get into this, because I do want to get into the honorable mentions, here is a bar that I set for these guys for you to make the list. Like, these are the credentials you have to make the list. This is the only one. You have to at least have started 5 games. Okay, so there's not going to be one guy, like 2-3 games started on here. That really helped me eliminate a lot of players. So just in case you guys are wondering how I built the list. So these, again, back to this. These are all the quarterbacks that have started since Dan Marino retired in 1999. Obviously, Jay Fielder, Damon Heward, Ray Lucas, Brian Griese, AJ Feely, Sage Rosenfels, I hope I said his name right, Gus Frerotte, Dante Culpepper, Joey Harrington, let's keep going, Cleo Lemon, I always want to say Lemon for some reason, but it is actually Lemon, Trent Green, John Beck, Chad Pennington, Chad Henne, Tyler Thigpen, shout out to Tyler Thigpen, Matt Moore, Ryan Tannehill, and then obviously you guys probably know the rest. Jay Cutler, Brock Osweiler, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Josh Rosen, and now Tua Tagovailoa. Just a big old sigh as a Dolphins fan. A lot of bad memories on this list. Yeah, what else can I say? But I want to get into the honorable mentions before we get into, in my opinion, the 5 worst quarterback since Dan Marino. So here are the honorable mentions. Jay Cutler is an honorable mention. Now, the reason Jay Cutler is an honorable mention really is because I just felt like people were like, why isn't he on this list? Honestly, he had a lot of good games as a Dolphin. Namely, his first start against the Chargers was pretty good. And his Monday Night Football win against the New England Patriots was pretty nice. He actually played really well in that game. And yeah, he also had a lot of lowlights, like the Carolina Panthers game. That was one of the worst. Honestly, I almost put him on the list because of that game. That game was god-awful. He also had great games against the Broncos blowout game, which was really cool. Kind of Xavier Howard's coming out party in that game. But like I just couldn't put him on the list because he had too many really good performances. His numbers aren't that bad. He had 19 touchdowns and 14 interceptions, which is not good, but honestly is way better than a lot of people on this list. And he also had a 60 completion percentage. Everybody in the comment section is probably like, why are we rewarding him for that? Because wait till we get to the 5 worst, and you'll understand why. So Jay Cutler isn't on the list because he is an honorable mention, because he had some really bad games, and his attitude wasn't great. And I don't know, I just didn't really enjoy his press conferences all that well, and I hated the whole thing wasn't great. But anyway, the point is Jay Cutler had a few good performances. That's the reason he's not on this list. Also, the team was injury riddled especially the offensive line. Yeah, that's the reason he's not on this list. Alright, there's actually quite a few honorable mentions on here. Another honorable mention is Dante Culpepper. Now, honestly, the only reason I would have put him on this list, he didn't obviously make this. He's on the honorable mentions. He only started 3 games, I believe. And I don't have I forgot to have the Dante Culpepper numbers in front of me. Hopefully I'm right about that. And he obviously doesn't hit the criteria of at least 5 starts. Also, I guess the thing that would propel him on this list is because of the impact of that decision to go with Culpepper over Breeze. So, and that just completely put the franchise in the gutter for the next 10 plus years. But, so you can make an argument for him to be on the list. I just was like, alright, he didn't play enough. It is what it is. So Dante Culpepper isn't on this list. Who else isn't on this list? Oh, Josh Rosen also was I almost put him on the list. I want to obviously apologize to the Dolphins fandom and community because I was actually for that trade. Yeah. I apologize to everybody. It was one of my brightest moments. Honestly, I don't know. He had a few nice games his rookie year, and I was like, maybe it'll work out. He's obviously had a nice career in college, and clearly, Josh Rosen's one of the worst first-round quarterbacks in NFL history. But he only played and started 3 games, so that's the reason he's not on the list. But he does have a lot going for him in terms of, we gave up a second-round pick to actually acquire him, and he was awful. Now, the 2019 team was not great either. They obviously had a good end of the year, but they had a good November and December. But other than that, it wasn't fun to watch. And, yeah. So that's the reason Rosen didn't make the list is because he just did not play enough games. One thing I will say about Rosen, though, is when you look at his stats, they're so bad, okay? They're really bad, especially for a modern NFL quarterback, which this is actually god-awful. When you look at his 2019 year at the Dolphins, which he only started 3 games, he went 0-3, obviously. His completion percentage was an abysmal 53. He threw for 567 yards, 1 touchdown, and 5 interceptions. Ladies and gentlemen, that is hard to do. He had a 5-yard, almost 4 yards an attempt, which is god-awful for a quarterback starting in today's day and era. So yeah, that's pretty bad. So yeah, I think that's it for honorable mentions. Honestly, I can't think of anything else that I want to mention here honorably. I'm trying to think. I mean, David Fells. There's a lot of forgettable guys in recent memory. But nobody that would make the 5 worst, honestly. But those are the 3 honorable mentions. Dante Culpepper, Josh Rosen, and Jay Cutler. All get honorable mentions. So, I just want to make sure I have the order here right before I start. This was actually really hard to order because, like I said, all of these guys suck. I will say some people are higher than they probably should be because I just have a personal gripe against them. As a fan, I just did not enjoy watching these players play. And some of them I just disliked more than others, and even though their numbers are technically better than some of the other ones. But honestly, I would love to see your guys' 5 worst and 5 least favorite. But these are the 5 worst, in my opinion, at least. So here's number 5. And this was hard for me to do because I wanted to put him higher, and he barely met the criteria to be on this list. And honestly, I probably would have put him on the list anyway. But coming in at number 5, the 5th worst quarterback to start in a Dolphins uniform, at least 5 games since Dan Marino retired, is Brock Osweiler. I hated watching this man play football. Even before he was in a Dolphins uniform, one of the worst watches, and honestly, it's astounding when you look at his career record. He actually finished with a 500 record with 15-15, which is amazing to me, because this is one of the worst players I've ever seen play ever in football. Brock Osweiler is a god-awful quarterback, and in 2018 season, which is the 5 games that he started, was a very dark year for Dolphins football. Like, it was not fun to watch. It was really bad. I think back to the Vikings game, honestly, probably was the lowest point. It gives me a migraine even thinking about it. Yeah, Brock Osweiler was not fun to watch. His stats for that year, and this is why he's only 5. He went 2-3 as a starter. One of those wins was greatly a huge assist from Albert Wilson, obviously, against the Chicago Bears. He did throw for over 60% completion percentage. He had a 63 completion percentage. And his yards and attempts were 7, which, again, not bad. And he threw 6 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. So that's the reason he's only 5. Even though I think the numbers are a little bit better than what his play on the field actually was. He missed a lot of throws. His pocket presence is pretty trash. And yeah, he was not fun to watch. So that is why Brock Osweiler is number 5, not higher, because his numbers are actually the best on this list. So there you go. Coming in at number 4, this is the fourth worst quarterback that started at least 5 games since Dan Marino retired, is Ray Lucas. Again, this is the reason he's not higher is this dude's pretty forgettable. He started 6 games in 2002 for the Miami Dolphins. He went 2-4. He had a 57 completion percentage, which is so bad. His yards attempt were 6. He threw 4 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, and he went 2-4 as a Dolphins quarterback. So if you have a 50 completion percentage, and again back then it was a little bit more common, especially since that era of football in the NFL was really, really bad for talent. It was probably one of the weaker times in NFL history. The talent for quarterbacks in like 2000 to 2005 was pretty bad. I guess maybe 2003 or 4 would be a little bit better of a mark there. But yeah, Ray Lucas was a part of that bad quarterback talent pool, and he was bad. He was really bad, and that's why he's 4. Not much else to say about Ray Lucas. Coming in at number 3, the third worst quarterback to start since Dan Marino, at least 5 games, is A.J. Feely. Yeah, his numbers are so bad. So bad. Again, another quarterback, a part of the weak talent pool of quarterbacks from 2000 to 2004. He went, and again, the games that he started 8 games in 2004 for the Miami Dolphins. He went 3-5. He had a completion percentage of 53. He threw for just under 2,000 yards, 1,800 yards. He had 11 touchdowns and 15 interceptions, and his yards of attempt were almost 4 yards in attempts. He just barely hit 5. So, yeah, it was pretty bad. Pretty bad. A.J. Feely, I'm interested to see, maybe other Dolphins fans would have him lower on this list. I don't think he can't not be on this list. The reason he's 3 is he started 8 games, which is one of the higher numbers on this list, and his yards attempt are one of the lowest on this list. And yeah, A.J. Feely, number 3. The second worst quarterback to start at least 5 games since Dan Marino retired in 1999 is Chad Henne. Now, here's one thing I will say about this. Chad, I honestly, out of everyone on this list, have the most disdain for him. I just never liked the way he played the game. He obviously played the most games out of anybody on this list. And yeah, so Chad Henne, and it's hard to, I mean, when you look at, I guess we'll go through all of his seasons as the Dolphin starter. He really started playing heavily from 2009 through 2011, which is by far the longest out of anybody on this list. His first year starting, he went 7-6 as a starter, which is not terrible. He had a 60 completion percentage. He went 12 touchdowns to 14 interceptions with a 6 yards per attempt. Not terrible, but still not anything. He had 2,800 yards passing, and it just progressively gets worse from there. He went 69 his next year as a starter. He had a 61 completion percentage, 15 touchdowns to 19 interceptions for the same yards per attempt, 6. So again, not great. And then it just gets worse. He went the next year in 2011, which was his last year as the Miami Dolphins starter. He went 0-4, a 57 completion percentage, 4 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, and one of the worst games I've ever seen, which was a loss to the Cleveland Browns. And yeah, Chad Henne was not great at all. Never really did anything significant. Other than, one of the longest tenured quarterbacks since Dan Marino retired, and would just put up terrible numbers. I mean, really put up terrible numbers. I could see a lot of people putting him lower on this list but I just did not enjoy watching him play for 3 years, playing significant amount of time. So that's the reason he's so far up. At least all the other ones, they were kind of one and done, or either that or they were relegated to backups right after that. You had to deal with this for 3 years. Just bad football. And the worst starting quarterback since Dan Marino retired in 1999, and that great honor goes to Cleo Lemon, excuse me. I don't know why I keep saying Chris. Cleo Lemon. Yeah, he started in 7 games in 2007, obviously the infamous 1-15 Miami Dolphins squad. He had 6 touchdowns to 6 interceptions with a 5 yards an attempt, which is god-awful. 1,700 yards passing, and again, he went 1-6 as the Dolphins starter. Trent Green, I think, is the second most played games on this team. Now, one thing that Chris does have going for him is he obviously beat the Ravens, so we didn't go 0-16. Here's my counter argument against that was it was against a backup quarterback to Chris Bowler, I believe, at the time. The Ravens had lost 7 games in a row, and this was before Harbaugh, people. So the Ravens were not in a good place at all. This was bad Ravens. This was not good Ravens. So this was a year before, obviously, I think Harbaugh came in with Flacco. So yeah, this was historically not a great Ravens team, obviously. And yeah, this was a 1-15 Cam Cameron led Dolphins team. And if it wasn't for this one terrible victory in overtime against the Ravens, which is an iconic victory for some reason in Dolphins lore, I think it has a lot to do with the 72 team being there. And actually, the 72 team went to a practice, and Cam Cameron himself, in his own words, literally said in a press conference that the 72 team helped them win this game. So I guess I would give the most credit to the 72 team, not necessarily Cleo Lemon, who actually had good numbers in that game, but overall is part of one of the worst years in probably, honestly, other than the early years in the 60s, the worst year in Dolphins franchise history. So that is why Cleo Lemon is where he is. Obviously, his numbers are terrible too. He had a 56, exactly 56, which you don't see that all the time. Exactly a 56 completion percentage, with 6 touchdowns to 6 interceptions and an abysmal 5 yards an attempt. And was a part of one of the worst teams in the NFL history, and one of the worst Dolphins teams in the history, if not the worst Dolphins team in the history of the franchise. So that's why Cleo Lemon takes the cake at number 1. There you go. And again, the thing about Cleo, and this is what I'm saying, is at least he was one and done. Alright, at least he got the heck out of there after that year. The reason Chad is so high is because he just played for so long. So yeah, that is your 5 worst quarterbacks since Dan Marino retired. Let me know what you guys think about the list down in the comment section below. I would love to read your lists. And yeah, hopefully stuff gets better, ladies and gentlemen. That's really all I have to say. So let's get into the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. And after going through all that negative energy, I will say this: at least the team that obviously we're going to be watching fairly soon, and I can't wait to talk about, especially in preseason, is a very talented team. So yeah. Let's get into the fan Q&A. This first question comes from Steve. Man. This next question comes from Steve. He says, recently I've seen several content creators come out with a top 10 list of Dolphins quarterbacks since Dan Marino retired. I would like to know, what is your top 10 list of linebackers since Zach Thomas retired? I guess it's because I didn't know a lot of people were doing that now, but you know what? I love talking about the history of the NFL. And not to toot my own horn, but I do know a lot about the history of the league. and I just love talking about it. So I do want to make more videos like this. And anyway, but I can't do 10 linebacker. I could probably do the 10 worst since Zach Thomas retired. I'm trying to think of who the best would be. I guess if you can kind of, man. The Kevin Burnett Carlos Dansby tandem in 2011 was not bad. One of the best run defenses we've had in a while. I'm sure they would rank very high on that list. But yeah, it would be hard off the top of my head to name 10. This next question comes from Steve. He says most fans are very high on the offense and the upgraded talent, as well as the level of success the team can have this year because of it all. But I think the most they are forgetting with everything so new and fresh, including. Okay, hold on, let me restart this. He said, I'm just gonna restart the question because I kind of botched that. This next question comes from Steve. He says most fans are very high on the offense and the upgraded talent, as well as the level of success the team can have this year because of it all. But I think most are forgetting with everything so new and fresh, including the coaching staff, is that it's going to take time for that all to gel. How far into the season do you anticipate it being before the offense really starts coming together? I actually disagree with that. We've seen a lot of newly formed offenses that have talent on them kind of just like even Patrick Mahomes is a great example of that with Kansas City. Even though those players had been in that system for a while, they still had a new quarterback, and there's a lot of examples of that, especially in recent memory. I don't know if it'll be drastically bad. Like, what will the learning curve be is a good question. I think that's a tough question to answer. It just depends on the coaching staff and how good of a job they do of getting the team ready, I guess. I will say that this is the most talented coaching staff we've had in a long time, and even though we've had some decently talented coaching staffs like the last 6-7 years, I wouldn't say that much. I would say the Brian Flores staff wasn't terrible, especially on defense. But offensively, it was not good at all. But this coaching staff is good on defense and offense. There's a lot of really talented coaches on both sides of the ball. A lot of experience there, too. I don't know. I'm going to actually say that the curve won't be bad at all. I think they'll get going pretty fast because of the talent of the coaching staff. And like I said, there's a lot of experience on that staff. This next question comes from SM. He says, after watching Tua get bounced around like a pinball for 2 years, I'm still not happy with all the questions on the line. There's not that many questions, I would say. Connor Williams, with the additions of Connor Williams and Teron Armstead, I really don't have any questions about Dieter. I think he's actually getting a lot better as a player. And Robert Hunt's a good offensive lineman. So that's like 4 guys that I'm pretty confident in. Everyone else, like Eichenberg, Austin Jackson, those guys have room to improve. I'm definitely way less confident in those guys. But those other 4, I actually like as players. The stretch that Dieter had recently was pretty good, and so I don't know. I like those 4. So we'll see where it goes. I think the question marks aren't that bad to answer your question, SM. But at least in my opinion, obviously you need to feel differently. This next question comes from Richard Rodriguez. Richard Rodriguez. He says, assuming Connor Williams takes over at center, who do you anticipate taking over at left guard? I would say probably Dieter. I could see a lot of people taking that spot, though. I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know to answer that question, because the tackle position, is Hunt going to play tackle? And if so, then I would probably say Dieter's definitely going to fill one of those guard spots. Eichenberg, I think maybe that's the plan for him as well. But I would say it was probably between those players, like Eichenberg, Austin Jackson as well could be in that mix. I really can't. That really is a toss-up. But I do believe Dieter will be on the five. You know what I'll say this: if Robert Hunt doesn't play at tackle, then I'll say Dieter is probably your guard. And I know, at least from what I remember, at least in the offseason, I think Hunt played mostly right tackle, and I do think he took some snaps at guard though. This next question comes from Vladimir. He says, Tua has all these weapons now, and many people think there is no excuse for him. If he has an okay, not an amazing season, do you see Miami moving on? Yes, I think it would have to be a really good season. You know, we've been, like I said, I've done the best quarterbacks and the worst quarterbacks lists, and researching all these guys and looking at the stats, taking into account what teams they were on, all that stuff. It would have to be like honestly, I think it would have to be the best since Dan retired. It would have to rival Tannehill's 27-12, or I think it was 27-14. His 2016 year, because he was really efficient that season. It would have to be something like that for him to stay, like a really, really good season, and the team would have to win. I do agree with that though, Vladimir. It can't just be like an okay year. It would have to be like, oh, this is the guy moving forward. It honestly, but like I said, it would have to be like one of the even if you look at like some of the best performances like since Dan retired, like Chad's 08 year, like I said, Tannehill's 2016 year. Those won't be tough to beat. Let's just put it that way. Because when you look back at some of that stuff, it's like, all right, like, so hopefully Tua can have a season like that to kind of a season that we really haven't seen in over 20 years, which was sad to kind of go back and look at some of that stuff. It's like, man, Tannehill really was the best starting quarterback since Dan retired, and it wasn't even close if you look at the numbers. And even in the context of everything, he had one of the, like, even if you compare him to Fielder had way better teams than Tannehill did, and better coaching. And Tannehill still was better. So it really is kind of sad to think of it like that. Like, we really haven't had a season from a quarterback in 20-plus years. And we haven't had a Pro Bowl quarterback since, 19, I think, when was the last year that Dan made it? Maybe 97, maybe 95, I can't remember. So, to answer your question, Vladimir, we desperately need Tua. And he has everything he needs to have a great year. This next question comes from Jerry. He says, was watching some old Hard Knocks clips this week. Seriously, who entrusted Joe Philbin to run a franchise? Even his staff was terrible. Only good thing that came from that regime was Darren Rizzi. Joe Philbin was an atrocious coach. He got hired from the Packers, and yeah, it was a success. It's like, who hired? And again, I don't know what Stephen Ross was thinking with that one, because I don't think... Honestly, it was a very much like a Cleveland Browns maneuver. That's how bad that hire was. Excuse me. Man, he made so many. Joe Philbin just made so, and so did Jeff Ireland. I don't know who was like in control of that front office at the time, because Ireland went on to have really good years drafting and with the Saints, obviously, and they just did such a bad job with Philbin and him with Tannehill. This next question comes from SM. He says, Skaggs, on paper, we are one of the best teams, or the best team in the... Okay, let me restart. SM says, Skaggs, on paper, we are the best team in the AFC East, but we have no depth at linebacker or O-line. Will this bite us in the butt for the 5th straight year? I actually do agree with that. I just would say the only reason that the Bills... is because of the quarterback, obviously, the gap there, that's pretty big right now. But I would say this, if, let's say we put 2 Josh Allens on the Dolphins and Bills, the Dolphins would win every single time. The Dolphins roster is better than the Bills roster. So it just comes down to Tua again, and I've probably said that a million times so far, but it just does. So yeah, I do agree with you though, Eston, that on paper we are better than them, especially on offense. But that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I had a really good time. I love the lists. The list making is fun. I would love to see some of your lists down in the comment section below. If you agreed with my list and all that stuff, I do enjoy making these. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.